Psychology of people with few or no friends. There's a moment most people don't admit out loud. Your phone lights up with another group invite, brunch, drinks, some loud social thing you're supposed to enjoy, and instead of excitement, you feel tired. Not anxious, not sad, just depleted. You'd honestly rather spend the afternoon alone, reading, thinking, reorganizing your space, doing something that actually feels like you. For a long time, culture has framed that reaction as a problem. If you don't want constant social interaction, something must be wrong. You must be lonely, antisocial, disconnected. But psychology tells a very different story. Researchers have been pointing this out quietly for decades. Having few friends and being lonely are not the same thing, and confusing the two has caused a lot of unnecessary self-doubt. Let's start with a distinction that matters more than almost anything else in this conversation. Psychologists differentiate between loneliness and chosen solitude. Loneliness is a painful emotional state, the distress that comes from feeling unseen, unsupported, or emotionally disconnected. Solitude, on the other hand, can be intentional, restorative, and deeply satisfying. You can live a relatively solitary life and feel emotionally full, and you can be surrounded by people every weekend and still feel profoundly alone. Research from institutions like the University of Chicago and UCLA consistently shows that social satisfaction is driven by alignment, not volume. It's not about how many people you know, it's about whether the relationships you do have meet your emotional needs. This is exactly what tools like the UCLA Loneliness Scale measure. The questions aren't, how many friends do you have? They're things like, I feel isolated, there are people I can talk to, I feel understood. What researchers found is striking. People with nearly identical social network sizes can report completely opposite levels of loneliness. The variable isn't quantity, it's felt connection. That's why someone with 3 close, long-term friendships can feel grounded and secure, while someone with hundreds of contacts and followers still feels empty. The human nervous system doesn't count faces. It responds to emotional safety and authenticity. Here's where it gets counterintuitive. People who prefer smaller social circles aren't avoiding connection, they're filtering for it. Personality research shows that individuals who are comfortable with limited social interaction often score higher on traits like self-awareness, emotional independence, and intrinsic motivation. In simple terms, they do things because they matter to them, not because they're trying to perform or belong. Their inner world is active, reflective, rich enough that constant external stimulation isn't necessary to feel alive. This isn't a flaw, it's a different psychological orientation. Many people who thrive with few friends have strong emotional self-regulation. They can sit with their own thoughts without panic. Silence doesn't feel threatening. Being alone doesn't immediately trigger the urge to escape into noise, scrolling, or people-pleasing. And that ability matters. Studies on emotional regulation show that people who can process their feelings internally rather than outsourcing that work to constant social interaction tend to form deeper, more stable relationships when they do connect. They're not reaching out to fill a void. They're reaching out from a place of wholeness. That's why, paradoxically, people who are comfortable alone often end up with more meaningful bonds over time. They invest their limited social energy intentionally. They choose relationships that respect boundaries, allow authenticity, and don't require performance. Quality over quantity isn't a slogan, it's a mental health strategy. Large-scale studies on aging, some involving over 30,000 participants, reveal another overlooked group, individuals who are socially isolated by objective measures, yet report low loneliness and high life satisfaction. These people have small networks but aren't suffering. In many cases, they function better than people with large social circles who feel emotionally disconnected. This tells us something crucial. The need for connection is personal and variable, not universal in form. A small circle isn't a deficit, it's a legitimate configuration of social life. Now let's talk about creativity, because this is where solitude stops being misunderstood and starts being undervalued. When you're not constantly managing social signals, reading faces, navigating group dynamics, adjusting your behavior to fit expectations, your brain gains bandwidth. Neuroscience shows that reduced social stimulation allows the mind to enter divergent thinking mode, the state associated with creativity, problem-solving, and original insight. Einstein famously credited quiet and solitude with stimulating creative thought, and modern research supports this. People with fewer social obligations often have more mental space to explore ideas deeply, make unconventional connections, and think without pressure to conform. They're not missing out on inspiration, they're creating the conditions for it. But there's an important nuance here that psychology doesn't ignore. Having few friends doesn't automatically protect you from loneliness. Chronic perceived isolation, the feeling that you're alone in the world regardless of how many people are around, has real consequences. Research from the National Institute on Aging links persistent loneliness to changes in attention, cognition, and long-term health outcomes. including cardiovascular risk. So the question isn't how many friends do you have? The real question is, do you feel emotionally connected to the people in your life? And does your current social structure match what you actually need? When you strip away cultural expectations about what friendship should look like, a pattern emerges. People who thrive with fewer relationships tend to share certain traits: strong internal values, comfort with introspection, clear self concept, healthy boundaries, emotional resilience. They're not avoiding people, they're selective, and that selectivity often comes from knowing themselves well enough to stop chasing validation. They still experience loneliness at times because everyone does, but they can tell the difference between temporary solitude and the deeper pain of being unseen. If you've ever felt out of sync with the pressure to maintain large friend groups or packed social calendars, psychology offers something validating. There is no single healthy social template. Some people need frequent interaction with many others to feel energized. Some need one or two deep connections and plenty of space to recharge. Neither is superior, neither is deficient. They're different psychological profiles shaped by personality, experience, and biology. What matters, consistently across the research, is alignment. Is your life structured in a way that supports how you actually function, or are you forcing yourself into a social mold that leaves you drained, performative, and disconnected from yourself? Because the psychology of people with few friends isn't really about friendship at all. It's about recognizing that human connection exists on a spectrum, and your place on that spectrum deserves respect, not pathologizing. The person with two close friends and a rich inner life isn't failing. The person with dozens of acquaintances and no one to call at 2 a.m. isn't winning. We're all just trying to find the balance of connection and solitude that lets us live honestly. And sometimes choosing the quiet isn't withdrawal, it's clarity. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing. And if you'd like to support more deep psychological breakdowns like this, joining the channel genuinely helps keep them coming.